we'll just leave that at the beginning, just in case we decide we want it later. But let's just import some other clips too. So I had shown you my audio file that's on the desktop, or my audio folder, and I already had a bunch of other stuff saved in here, and so you can kind of you know, preview some of the stuff. Right, so there's the beginning of that, and that's just the sound of this sort of underwater noise, you know, that you might want to play around with. I mean, well, not something that I downloaded. It's kind of interesting if you can find ambient sounds and sort of different kinds of sound samples that are not just music, right? Think outside the box and don't just use music, please. It'll be a lot more interesting. You know, like the sound of wind could be good, or the sound of crickets, or the sound of scratching, or I don't know, whatever makes sense. Thunderclaps, you know, whatever you need. And this is the sound of like this long radar scanner sound. You know, and these sounds are available if you wanted to find some stuff. Let's just jump over here really quick to a new web browser page. If you go to, and there's a link to this from Canvas. If you go to learn.leekottner.com, let's just go to my main website so I don't have to keep typing. And then you can go there and you can find under courses, look at our course, and then you would scroll down under free media resources. But also, as I said before, straight off the Canvas landing page, there is a link to this. And so down at the bottom, I'm going to collapse all these titles just so that we can easily find what we're looking for. There are free audio resources, and you can go here. Now, Freesound is the one that I just got those really interesting ambient noises from, like the radar and the underwater noise. It sounds like bubbles underwater. So if you were to go to that one, for instance, you can find some really interesting sounds. Now, with this one, you do have to create a free account. They're not going to sell your information, and you're not going to get crazy stuff as a result, but you do have to have an account so that you can download stuff. So I'm going to just log into my account. You would have to register. Let me see if I can remember. Okay. All right, so I went ahead and I logged in, and now if I wanted to listen to some different stuff, you know, I could just go and I could do searches. I could look through sounds. Now, this is interesting. It's like the random sound of the day. It says, I dragged something on the floor to make it look like a corpse being dragged, recorded with, you know, a Rode is a brand of microphone. So here, let's listen to this real quick and see how it sounds. I don't know if it sounds like a corpse or not, but you know, anyway, that's not really all that interesting. If I do search sound, let's say that I want to find something that sounds like crickets. I love this website, by the way. So what is this one? Let's try Ambient Nightlife, right? And then you can play a sample. So if you want this sort of like insect sound, you know, you could look at something like this. Anyway, you get the idea. If you want bells ringing, if you want cars crashing, whatever, you can sort of go down a rabbit hole on this website. It's really, really good. Anyway, and everything is free for download. And it makes it really clear also, like on this site, like how to do attributions too. Anyway. Okay, so Freesound is one. Soundcloud is good for music and stuff, but I will say that sometimes for the Creative Commons section, sometimes the downloads are not really clearly available. So, you know, don't kill yourself spending too much time on that, because you might end up getting frustrated if you find that you can't download some of the music. This is a really nice one because it's classical music that's been recorded that is available for reuse, and so they're just recordings that you can check out, and you might be able to find some stuff to use there. FMA, Free Music Archive, so you can look there too. Anyway, There's also the YouTube audio library. You have to have a Google account, so you'd have to log into that. But that's also stuff that you can download too. Internet Archive is great. It's public domain stuff, so it's not even governed necessarily, well, not necessarily, it's not governed by a Creative Commons license. It is public domain, meaning that you can use it free of charge. It no longer has valid copyright. And this is a great website. So for instance, here's something that's folk sound. It's a library of different things. So, I mean, you can find all sorts of strange stuff on here. Some of it's music. Actually, a lot of this looks like music. This is sound effects and recorded ambience. I mean, that one's kind of interesting. So you can just really find some interesting stuff like galaxy sound effects, natural sounds. Let's listen to this natural sounds field recording. Something called innocent sound effects, whatever that means. Okay, so let's just play this. Sounds sort of like wind so far. It's hard to hear. I don't know if you can actually hear the quiet campground. Sounds like fire in the background. Let's see, deeper gurgles, right? So anyway, some of the stuff you find might be cool, some of it might not be. And that's a geyser. Kind of sounds a little bit like a toilet. All right, there's a windstorm. That actually sounds like a wind and rainstorm, so that could be really useful. Crickets, thunder and rain. Like this might be really good to use for something if it makes sense, like you need some kind of nature ambient sound. So you can find a lot of this kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going. You should just keep looking for these things, all right? And spend some time with it. Don't get impatient. Like really enjoy this process. Like you're taking this class for a reason. There's also this thing called Ambient Mixer. Now, if you don't, I think you have to have a paid account now. There are some ways of getting some really cool sounds. Like you can mix them, you can, make the different things at different levels. You can put them on loops. You can also record straight off your computer. There are different ways. I'm not going to talk to you about that, but there might be ways that you can get some of this without having to pay for it. But I would actually really suggest like that you not do it that way. Like if you use this ambient mixer to get an idea of something that you like, I would actually try to go and find component pieces from some other resources and do it yourself, right? Anyway, this is the thing about SoundCloud. And if you want to, you can do this clip converter if you need to convert the file formats and so on. Anyway, so that's how you can get some of the sounds. This is something that was recorded. Inspiration is something I find in everything. Okay, and that's my voice. It's not me just saying blah, 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 I'm recording, right? And so that might be something I'd want to import and play around with. But, like if you had actually recorded something from your phone, one of the things that you could do is you could share that up to your Google Drive, or if you have iCloud, you could share it from iCloud, and then you would come to your computer, you would log into your Google Drive or your iCloud, and you would download them onto your computer. Another thing that you could also do if you're recording stuff straight to your phone is you can, like if you have an Android, for instance, you can use this thing called Android file transfer, where you plug your phone straight into your computer, and you can just transfer files from your phone to your computer. iPhones can do the same thing on an Apple computer. It's no big deal, easy. Anyway, so I just wanted to show you that. So let's go back here, and we're going to say File, let's say Import Audio. And so I'm going to locate, we're in this audio folder. I don't know, I'm just going to grab something. So maybe I want to grab this going under, and maybe we'll grab this, and maybe we'll grab some classical music, requiem, opera, operatic music, right? And so, and it's saying either copying them in a project. Yeah, so that's fine. We'll make a copy before editing. That's fine. Okay, and so we have some different stuff here that we can, play around with. And right now, what we can do is mute some other files. Here, I'm going to scroll up. Let's mute some of these so that we can listen. Let's listen to this one, for instance. Let's just go to the beginning. And some other things that I want you to notice about the waveform is that you'll notice if we zoom in, actually I don't really even need to zoom in, you'll see that some of the amplitude gets pretty high up to the very top, and in some of these it looks like they got a haircut, right? And that you might have remember me saying something about the amplitude getting a haircut. Remember, amplitude is the strength of the signal, so it's the loudness. So if you see all of these lines that all sort of have exactly the same clipping point, then that means that the recording device was not capable of accepting the loudness of the amplitude, and so it clips it off, it cuts it off at a certain point. And so that's where you can sometimes have this effect of distortion. This might be okay and it might not, so I can just click this, grab this, and mark that spot and then play it here. And it's not too bad, but it's a little bit, there are some places that are a little tinny. The other thing that you'll notice is that because this is a stereo track, look, the channels are not the same, right? They're not identical. And so in this particular case, this stereo track really does have different things happening in the right channel and the left channel. And so you'd want to make sure that that you maintain that that stereo capacity for this file. Anyway, so I'm going to mute that one, and let's unmute this one. We'll jump back to the beginning, maybe come in right about here, where. Right. I don't know. Could be something that we use, right? But you can start to get some of these things in together and play around with them. Not that you have to love this, but maybe there's a reason to use it, something like that. I don't know. And maybe you could even see like what happens whenever these things are overlaid on each other, right? Let's see how weird that might be. And maybe it's not as weird as you might think, right? And so if this top track has, you can just look at the waveforms, right? And you can see that the amplitude on this, where it's called going under, well, actually, it's called going under. You can see the name up here, this track 9. You can see the amplitude is way, way, way greater. The strength of the signal is much, much greater than the one on this classical recording. So what we might want to do is we might want to amplify the classical recording so that it's louder, and then change the amplification on the piano piece so that it's a little bit quieter. There's some different ways of doing that. If I wanted this top piece to kind of gradually get quieter, then I can use this thing called the envelope tool, where I go in here and I create a point. Like I clicked to create a point here, and then I'm going to say that by this point is where I want the fade to kind of level off to its quietest point. And I can just click and I can drag that down so that it starts to get a little bit quieter. And then you'll notice that the whole thing will just sort of stay quiet for the rest of the piece. And then I could continue to add points to make it get louder in places. And like maybe here where it gets quiet, I'd maybe want to make it louder. But let's just see what happens. Let's just see how that changed. Oh, the other thing that I can do too is I could create points here. Like let's say we've got that point and we've got this point where I can expand it so that it gets a little bit bigger. I'm amplifying it, right? So that it gets, whoops, gets a bit louder. So let's just see what happens. we can play around with this, right? So let's jump here. And that might not be working out as well as I had hoped. And so I can hit the undo button a couple of times. Sometimes that's exactly what you need, and sometimes it doesn't work as well. So the other thing that I could do on this track, I'm going to mute this one for right now. And I'm going to take this entire track, and if I do Command A, oops, not Command A, let's just do, if I triple click it, it just takes the whole selection. So what I can do is I can go up to make a change on effect. I can change amplification on it. And remember, just because I want to make it quieter doesn't mean that I wouldn't choose amplify. And you see this thing that says allow clipping? If I were making this louder, then the clipping is the thing I'd have to be worried about, because remember, if we're increasing the amplification, then it could clip it. It could give the amplitude a haircut if the input source can't handle it. But I actually want to see what happens whenever I make it quieter, and we can preview it. Let's make it a little bit quieter again. Significantly quieter. And then because I've changed it, you can kind of hear this like noise in the background, and that's some of the artifacts that are left over by my changing it. All right, so let's do it again. And that's nice and quiet. And so maybe just a tiny bit more, right? Okay, and let's just say okay. And you're going to see this waveform. Ooh, wow, see, it really changed. And so now if I were to come and play these two things overlapping, it might actually be something that is easier to hear. And I might decide also that I really hate what I'm doing, but this is part of it. It's just exploring and trying to overlay sounds that you may not have originally think would go together, but man, maybe it creates something really interesting, right? And maybe this isn't what you want, but it actually kind of creates an eerie effect. Anyway, and what I probably would continue to do to play around with this, because I actually think that this could make a really impactful sound, but there's some places that just like the tonality doesn't really go quite together. And so there's some other things that you can also do. Like if something is not quite in the right octave or the right pitch, you perceive the pitch to be something that's off from the other one, you can modify that. You can also speed something up, which is kind of cool. What's really nice is that you don't have to assemble everything in Audacity. What you can do is kind of use it to manage your clips where you're making changes to the sound of your voice, or maybe you're getting rid of the places where you say or right? You can delete those pieces and parts. And then the other thing that I don't encourage you to do, oddly enough, right, is I don't encourage you to try to get all of your spoken word out here like completely managed where you just do it in one run and then you export it out as one big long file. I don't encourage that, and the reason why is because if you still go ahead and keep your voice broken up into these manageable clips, it's going to be easier for you to manage, when you're sort of self-directing as you're speaking and trying to sound good in your editing, but also it'll make you feel less rushed. And the other thing is you don't know yet what's going to happen whenever you start to put your imagery in and your video and stuff like that. And you may want the flexibility of having multiple different clips where you can kind of start and stop things, so that maybe you have a breather space where you've just got some video and then you start speaking again, right? So this happens to be one big long track of me talking, doing my inspiration thing, but they didn't start out that way. And this actually, I think, you could make one big long track, but you can also export them out in like smaller clips too. You know, so you might have a few recorded pieces of your voice in different tracks, and maybe you just want to go ahead and export them out after doing some editing. Maybe, you know, maybe you need to amplify your voice because your mic wasn't good enough. Maybe you just, you know, you need to get some noise out or whatever. So there are a lot of different things that you can do in here. You could also, like, for instance, if you want to add reverb to make it sound more ambient, you could do something like that. So like, here, let's listen to this voice. Happiness. But the reality is that I feel a lot less creative when I'm happy than when I'm... Okay, so this is something like if I wanted to add reverb to it to sound like I was in an empty room, I could come up here. Let's go to reverb. And then let's just see what that setting without changing it would do. Inspiration is something I find in everything. If we want to turn the room size up just a little bit, then it's going to make it echo a little bit more, and we could turn the reverberance up a little bit. Inspiration is something I find in everything. You can hear the difference. I can find it in looking at a bird on a wire. And so you could add just a little bit to give a little bit of dimension to your voice if you feel like your recording is really flat or something. So there's that option too. Anyway, so I think that this would be a good place for the end of this particular video, and then we'll pick up with some more effects that you can use and how you can export out your final files.